Well, hello everyone. I wanted to put together a lecture video here, basically to help you out by giving you some additional material that is not found online, or at least in our textbook. I want to go ahead and use this to help you with the assignment and help up with some of the material. So here goes. These are some other types of disorders other than the things you'll find in the chapter, such as eating disorders and mood disorders and schizophrenia. You find a lot of those. But these I don't think are talked about well, and I want to go ahead and say a little bit about these, okay? There are what are called neurocognitive disorders. Neurocognitive disorders basically are disorders that occur because of a deterioration in the brain. Okay, so there's deterioration in the brain. It can be due to illness. It could be due to disease. It could be due to other atypical symptoms. One example of a neurocognitive disorder is Alzheimer's disease. I think many people know what that is if they have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who have suffered from Alzheimer's disease. That is subclassified as a neurocognitive disorder. So any neurocognitive disorder means that you have someone who's showing outward changes due to a physiological change in the makeup of the brain due to illness or disease and things of that sort. One thing that is not included under neurocognitive is substance use disorders, also known as substance abuse disorders. These have a category all their own. There can be internal damage to the body, possibly even the brain and central nervous system, but it's not due to illness or injury, obviously. It's due to outside substances. And most of these substances are illegal, but some are legal based on age, such as alcohol, as well as other substances in here. In fact, in my field of industrial organizational psychology, we actually study substance abuse disorders a lot. We deal with them a lot because we deal with people that have drug problems and are at work. All right. And so there are anything from illegal substances of heroin and cocaine and things of that sort, legal substances based on age, alcohol. You can have alcohol legally if you're over 21 years of age. And there are actually other categories as well. There really is a category such as, for example, caffeine-induced behavior changes. That is a subcategory of a substance use disorder. So those are two big ones there. Here's a few more. Somatoform disorders. Now, soma or somato, if you remember, means body. And a somatoform disorder is a bodily disorder, okay? There's something physically wrong with the body. And this means it's a downright disorder. It's brought on a lot of times by the mind. And that's part of this. Now, be aware, if someone turns around and is really nervous, really worried, and they start to have a headache, their head starts to hurt, that is a somatoform reaction. It is not necessarily a somatoform disorder. There is a difference there. With a disorder, there is a physiological change, and it's typically rather over the top. Okay, it's not something very mild. One example is what is called a conversion disorder. With a conversion disorder, and this is a bit controversial, with a conversion disorder, an individual is under a tremendous amount of stress or strain, and what they turn around and do is that they unconsciously, that's part of the controversy. You have to believe in the unconscious. The unconscious, as a way of protecting them or taking away all this extreme stress or worry, will actually alter the human body in terms of paralysis, blindness, inability to hear something. We've actually seen cases of that before, where because of extreme stress, a person undergoes a change. In World War II, bomber pilots, this is a true story, were found to sometimes start to worry that they were killing women and children when dropping bombs from, 10,000 feet up. And they actually started to suffer from blindness or have vision problems, even though there was nothing physically wrong with their eyes. Okay? In another example, I had been told once of a young man and young lady who were 17 and 16 years old who ran away from home. They were dating. They ran away from home. And she was reluctant, the 16-year-old girl. She loved her boyfriend, but she was reluctant about leaving. When they left in the middle of the night, she fell asleep in his pickup truck. She wasn't being taken against her will, but she was reluctant. She woke up several hours later and basically was paralyzed from the waist down. She could not walk, and it was genuine. She could not walk. Basically, there was no cause. There was no physiological underlying reason why. And what they did was they diagnosed her with a conversion disorder, because they ultimately took her back home, which is what she wanted, and she regained the feeling in her legs and could walk again. There's also what is called a delusional disorder. A delusional disorder, a delusion, let's define the term delusion first, is a false belief. Believe something that is not true. Believe that people are after you. Believe that you are having a love affair when in fact you're not. Believe that you are someone of great importance and you have to get information to the governor or the president or the mayor or something like that. That sounds a lot like schizophrenia. The difference between schizophrenics who have delusions versus a delusional disorder is this. People suffering from a delusional disorder, okay, their false beliefs are typically mild to moderate. They're not severe. They're not extreme, okay, as sometimes they are with schizophrenia, okay? In fact, it's been said that the delusion that a person may be suffering from might actually be true in some other circumstance, but in this particular one, it's just not the case, okay? For example, this is an example that was given to me. An elderly gentleman lost his wife, whom he had been married to for almost 60 years. Okay, she died suddenly. It was not foul play. But somehow he convinced himself that his grown children, all right, and their spouses and his grandchildren were waiting now for him to die so that they could have the farm and all the money. Somehow he got this stuck in his head. And he got to the point that he stopped talking to his children, to his son-in-laws and daughter-in-laws and his grandchildren. He'd talk with his friends just fine, especially his children. He'd have nothing to do with them. You're just waiting for me to die. And they would tell him, Dad, we're not waiting for you to die. I swear to God, please talk to us. And he wouldn't do it. And the kids were not after farm. We're not. He had convinced himself of this to the point he was cutting himself off of family and friends. He was suffering from a mild delusional disorder. Okay, so that's an example, a false belief. And like I said, there are many different types. The last one I'm going to talk about is called an OCD, or an obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, when we talk about obsessions and compulsions, obsessions, all right, are thoughts. Compulsions are behaviors. Be aware of this. If you ever get a song stuck in your head, you can't stop thinking about it. If you ever see something in a movie that maybe is real graphic and you can't stop thinking about it, that's an obsessive thought. The answer, does that make for a disorder, is this. Does it interfere with your ability to function on a daily basis? The vast majority of people would tell you, no, I couldn't get the song out of my head all afternoon, but I'm fine. Well, that's not a disorder, okay? With an obsessive compulsive disorder, an individual turns around and their obsession or their compulsion is so severe that it interferes with their ability to function on a daily basis. Okay? I'll give you an example. We had an example once of an individual that just obsessed over the fear that they had left their house unlocked and possibly left the stove on or something on that could cause the house to burn down. And while driving in from the local area to OTC, they actually would drive in and they would just be obsessed with this fear that they left something on or they left a window open on their house, that they would drive back home. And I guess on one particular day, they were so obsessed with all this that even though they checked the house multiple times, I guess they turned around and drove back home 3 times. And I think this was a 20-mile drive. I don't know what town it was. I don't, but it was 20 miles from here. So instead of getting to their 8 o'clock class, they finally got to campus about 11:30. And in that time, they drove back home 3 times to double check to make sure the house was completely locked. That's a bit obsessive compulsive in that regard. Compulsions include compulsive gambling, where people turn around and find themselves unable to stop a particular behavior. That can be compulsiveness. Compulsions are action. Now, there are 2 different types of OCD. There are anxiety-based OCD and personality-based OCD. When we say that OCD is anxiety-based, all right, what that means is that when the person tries to stop the behavior, that's when the anxiety starts. I mean, they go on living their life just fine. All is good. But when they tell themselves, for example, I'm not driving back home. I'm not driving back home. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to work. The house is fine. And yet they sweat bullets. Okay? That's anxiety-based OCD. Okay? I'm going to go with my friends to the casino and I'm taking $30. And when that's gone, it's gone. And the person loses, and what happens? They're just sweating bullets because they have to play. They have to get that money back. That's an example of anxiety-based. A personality-based OCD occurs when everything about the person is OCD. Okay? The whole persona is OCD. All right? Whereas with anxiety-based, it may be just in a particular category, all right? With a personality-based, everything about them falls into that category, okay? So these are some extras that I want you to know in addition to what's in the book, okay, in this chapter. And I want you to know them well because they could be on the final exam. They could be part of this week's assignment. All right, folks, that's it for now. Keep up the good work.